Assalamu alaikum. In our last lecture, we studied about Pakistan's foreign policy, its objectives and determinants, as well as we have focused over the definitions of foreign policy and the need of foreign relations, with special reference of Pakistan's geostrategic position. Today we will study about our relations with world powers such as um, United States of America and Russia, and then we will go towards our immediate neighbors, relations with our immediate neighbors. Afterwards, in the next lecture, let's start how we developed our relations after independence with superpowers of that time, and how we work with diplomacy and tried our best to show diplomatic relations with the superpowers of that time. Actually, the word diplomacy has deep meanings. Is the practice of conducting and negotiating between representatives of states or groups. It entails influencing the decisions and conduct of foreign governments and officials through dialogue, through negotiations and other non-violent means. Yani, we want to make good relations without having any aggressive mode, and want to develop good relations by having arguments and table talks. It usually refers to the international relations carried out through the intercessions of professional diplomats with regards to a full range of topical issues. Actually, as you know students very well कि सुपर पास के साथ हमारे जो ताल्लुकात होते हैं वो वन टू वन नहीं होते. हमारे यहाँ जो हमारे डिफरेंट प्रेशर ग्रुप्स होते हैं या हमारे पास जो डिफरेंट रिलेशंस होते हैं थ्रू आउट दी वर्ल्ड, वो सब उस पर इम्पैक्ट करते हैं. तो उसके लिए ज़रूरी होता है कि हम निगोशिएट करें और पॉलिसी ऑफ डिप्लोमेसी अपनाएं. हम स्ट्रेट रिलेशंस कायम करने को अवॉइड करते हैं. और ये फॉरेन पॉलिसी का एक बड़ा डिप्लोमेसी इज द मेन इंस्ट्रूमेंट ऑफ फॉरेन पॉलिसी which represents the borders, goals and strategies that guide a state's interactions with the rest of world. Means कि हम इसके ज़रिए से अपने फॉरेन पॉलिसी का ये कैसा इंस्ट्रूमेंट है डिप्लोमेसी, जिससे हम पूरी दुनिया में मुख्तलिफ ममालिक के साथ ताल्लुकात कायम करते हैं और अपनी ज़रूरियात को और अपने नेशनल इंटरेस्ट को सामने रखते हुए अपने बॉर्डर्स पे रिलेशंस डेवलप करते हैं. International treaties, agreement, alliances, and other manifestations of foreign policy are usually the result of diplomatic negotiations and process. Diplomat also help shape a state foreign policy in an advisory capacity. यानी कि आपने अक्सर देखा होगा कि हम डिप्लोमेट्स अपने अपॉइंट करते हैं दूसरे मुल्कों के अंदर ताकि हम वो एक हमारे लिए एडवाइजरी कमेटी के तौर पे काम करते हैं और हमारे रिलेशंस को शेप अप करते हैं थ्रू द प्रोसेस ऑफ निगोसिएशन. समटाइम जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल यहाँ पर मैं यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स ऑफ अमेरिका की बात कर रही हूँ तो ऑन द वर्ल्ड्स फेस अगर दुनिया की तरफ देखें तो बड़े अच्छे रिलेशन है. बट ऑन द इंटायरली हमारी इंटेलिजेंस एजेंसीज देखें या हमारे लोग देखें तो हमारे ताल्लुकात के दरमियान काफ़ी ज़्यादा क्लैश भी मौजूद है. लेकिन इस सब को रिड्यूस करने में और एक बेहतर ताल्लुकात कायम करने में सबसे ज़्यादा जो रोल प्ले करता है वो एक फैक्टर है जिसको हम डिप्लोमेसी कहते हैं. मोस्ट ऑफ द वर्ल्ड सोवरेन स्टेट्स provides a framework for diplomatic procedures, methods and conducts. Most diplomacy is carried out by accredited career diplomats through a dedicated political institutions such as Ministry or Department of Foreign Affairs. As I discussed in my last lecture, that Foreign Affairs Office of Foreign Affairs deals with the all type of strategies regarding our relations with other states, usually with the support of staff and diplomatic infrastructures such as consulate and embassies. And same, the thing is repeating here that how this diplomacy works. It works through the foreign affairs departments who appoint different kinds of consulates and embassy members in other states, and we have embassy in our group, with superpowers such as America, Russia, Britain, France, etc. Diplomacy is also conducted through other offices such as envoys and ambassadors. The term diplomat is thus sometimes applied broadly to diplomatic and consular personnel and foreign ministry officials more generally. Relations established between countries are due to interest between them, and diplomacy plays a key role in this. So, you can notice that diplomacy is a factor through which we can develop our good relations and work with our special national interest or interest of the people. We should be through our the factor of diplomacy. Let's start our relations with what was happened after independence and how we developed our relations with America. The Pakistan-US relationship dates back to birth of Pakistan. In the first high-level exchange between the two countries, President Harry Truman sent a congratulatory message to Qaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah on Pakistan emergence among family of nations. Former diplomatic relations was established on 15 August 1947. Then we have a multi-facet and broad-based relationship driven by cooperations in area ranging from education to energy and from defense to trade and investment. This cooperation is rooted in shared values and coverage of interest on religion and strategic issues. The Americans continued to try to persuade India to join an anti-communist pact with them, but the Indians were reluctant to do so. In contrast, Pakistan was prepared to join such an alliance in return from military and economic aid. An agreement was signed and American aid began to flow into Pakistan. During the independence struggle, the Americans had often talked of the need of unity between Muslims and Hindus. Since the Muslims were trying to establish an independent Muslim homeland, they were disturbed by this. The United States of America also took several years before it sent an ambassador of Pakistan. Liaquat Ali Khan was frustrated by the coolness of the US in relations to Pakistan. The American towards an alliance with Pakistan, and in 1949 accepted an offer to visit the Soviet Union. If these intentions had been to force the American to closer alliance, he was very successful. Then he received an invitation from USA, and Liaquat Ali Khan made his first visit in 1950 and arranged for Pakistan embassy established in USA. We have established a relationship between Pakistan and USA. Between 1954 and 55, Pakistan signed 3 agreements with which firmly established it so pro-West anti-communist country. And in May 1954, Pakistan and USA signed the Mutual Defense Assistance Agreement. Then in September 1954, the Southeast Asia Treaty Organization (SEATO) was set up. The members were the USA, the UK, France, Philippines, Thailand, New Zealand, and Australia. Pakistan also joined, but the decision faced opposition from within the Pakistan government, and so the treaty was ratified until 1955. In the treaty stated that if any member were attacked, it could appeal to the other members for support. However, there was a major problem as far as Pakistan was concerned. The treaty applied only to help against communist aggression. This means that Pakistan received no support in its wars against India, nor was help provided to prevent East Pakistan breaking away. Pakistan had hoped to pursue SEATO to set up a permanent military force to protect all members um, countries against any attack. By 1972, it had decided that membership of SEATO was limited value and Bhutto withdraw Pakistan from this organization. This was really a good decision by Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. If it is not fruitful for us, why we should continue with it? We should leave it and go ahead. मैंने इतना सारा बोला और वो स्टक रहा आया ही नहीं मैंने प्ले किया तो कुछ चल ही नहीं रहा we have to talk about our relations with USA. After 1959, we have to develop good relations with America, and during 1960 and 70s, often we strained. As well as in 1962, China and India went to a war. China was communist and the USA immediately sent military aid to help India fight. This move offended the Pakistan government, which rightly argued that it should, at the very least, have been consulted before India was given aid. Pakistan leaders also argued that Americans should have forced the Indians to accept arbitrations on Kashmir issue as a price for receiving aid. Although the American promised to consult Pakistan in future, in practice they were pleased to get the large non-communist state into an agreement. And it was a great habit of America that he usually didn't support his friends, just like Pakistan. And after in 1962, both China and the Soviet Union seemed keener to have Pakistan as an ally than the USA. And especially in 1962, Ayub Khan visited China, and in 1965, the Soviet Union. These visits displeased the USA, but on the other hand, Pakistan diplomacy is working on first grounds, and ultimately, as we can see in the war against India in 1965, USA joined the UK in arm in both countries, while Pakistan got supplies from China and a huge help from Iran as well as. However, these relations continued in future. In 1971, the USA didn't help Pakistan during the civil war in East Pakistan and took few measures to help in the war against India. And though it sent a fleet to warn India not to attack Pakistan, although Ayub had offended the Americans by visiting China and Soviet Union, he was considered the architect of good relations between USA and Pakistan. He allowed the Americans to build air bases in Pakistan and remained loyal to the United States, even during the embarrassing U-2 affairs, when an American spy plane had taken off from Peshawar and had been shot down over Soviet territory. When Ayub was disposed and replaced by Bhutto, the Americans was concerned that he was not as pro-American as his predecessors, and relations between the two countries deteriorated. Bhutto even accused the Americans of organizing the opposition against him in 1977. Relations reached rock bottom when Ziaullah came into power in 1977. The Americans didn't approve of military regime and isn't want to from an alliance with Zia. Then in November 1979, USA embassy in Islamabad was burned down. The USA accused Zia of the complicity in the attack and recalled many of its senior officers. All aid programs were cancelled. However, Pakistan got a miracle through Afghan. In December 1979, however, the situation changed. The Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan. Pakistan was suddenly on the front line in the war against communism. Now the attitude of United States of America towards their government changed overnightly. Reservations about his domestic policies were quickly put aside. What was more important to USA was to have Zia supposed to oppose the Soviet Union in Afghanistan. Then you can look at how American take a U-turn to in its foreign policy towards Pakistan, and in turn for supporting the Afghan rebels against the Soviet Union. The USA offered Zia substantially economic and military aid. Zia made the most out of American need. In 1980, he turned down their first offer and as aid as insufficient. By 1981, the Americans had agreed to um, release $1.6 billion aid package over 5 years and further $1.5 billion rupees at low rate of interest to enable Pakistan to buy modern US weapons. As well as this, it enabled Pakistan to enjoy rapid economic development and also to become a leading military nation in this region. Not surprisingly, India objected strongly to the American aid program, but Pakistan was not too valuable an ally for the USA to offend. India in 1986 a further aid program. India did in 1986 a further aid program over providing $4.2 billion worth of military and economic aid was signed after Israel and Egypt. Pakistan was the largest of the American aid, and you can see that it was a great help for Pakistan regarding upliftment of its military and economic policies. But as we discussed their regime in our previous lectures, it Pakistan has to pay a lot of cost regarding this war against in Soviet Union in Afghanistan, as this Soviet Union push back through Pakistan's support, and Russia divided into different countries. Um, Afghan war has been ended, and USA just take one more turn, and he just um, make a plan, and his best friend Zia was martyred in his aircraft crash, and it has been a great conspiracy yet, but there are a number of perceptions and diplomats who said that USA was directly involved in this incident, and after that Prime Minister Benazir Bhutto came into power, and he makes promised to have a good relations with USA, Russia, and China. She realized the importance of American aid to Pakistan, and in June 1989, he left the USA. However, Pakistan has a controversy regarding its nuclear weapon. The American was particularly concerned about Pakistan's nuclear program, and in 1980 he had tried to get it to sign the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. Benazir made a speech to the USA Congress saying that her country had no nuclear weapon but had a right to continue its nuclear program to ensure that it could defend itself. She said that Pakistan was willing to declare that the subcontinent should be nuclear free if India did the same. In 1985, the Pressler's Amendment had said that the USA could only give aid to a country after the American president had declared that country and no clear weapon and was developing them and was not developing them. During the Afghan crisis, these rules were conveniently ignored. But when the war ended, President George H.W. Bush refused to declare Pakistan was nuclear free and blocked aid to country. He was opposed the sale of 28 F-16 fighter jets with Pakistan and ordered and paid for. The withdrawal of US aid was a serious blow to Benazir government as a major refurbishment of the military forces was underway. Pakistan was the third largest recipient of US military aid, and the refurbishment was due to financed from a $4 billion economic development program due to run in 1993. Pakistan complained bitterly that the Pressler's Amendment seemed to apply only to Pakistan, not India. How was this fair? The USA complained that Pakistan becoming a major center for distribution of illegal drugs and of home-produced weapons. These weapons were falling into the hands of terrorists who were using them against the USA. In 1992, the USA came close to the declaring Pakistan as a state sponsor of terrorism and placed economic sanctions on the country. As president elections held in America and there was a change in government, President Clinton came into power in 1993, and after having his office, he wanted to restore relations with Pakistan and India. He also agreed to that Preston's amendment had led to unfair treatment and suggested that if Pakistan stopped producing weapons, great uranium nuclear weapons, he would agree to sell the F-16s. In January 1995, Defense Secretary William Parry visited Pakistan and declared that Preston Amendment had been a mistake. Bhutto visited the United States in 1996, and following her visit, the Brown Amendments authorized the U.S. government to reimburse Pakistan for F-16 payment and provide $388 million in military equipment. Benazir Bhutto was delighted and said, the passing of the Brown Amendment has vindicated Pakistan principles case and goes a long way towards restoring the warmth which in the past characterized the relationships between USA and Pakistan. The thaw in the relations was further highlighted when First Lady Hillary Clinton and her daughter Chalisa visited Pakistan in 1996, and it has been said that United States has played an important role in the young history of Pakistan, being one of the first countries to recognize their independence on 14 August 1947, and the relations between two countries went through varying levels of friendliness. But Pakistan consistently found themselves on the United States side of issue faced during the Cold War. Pakistan served as a geostrategic position for US military bases during the Cold War since it bordered the Soviet Union and China. These positive relations would fall apart following successful cooperation in fighting the Soviet Union influence in Central Asia and the subsequent fall of the Soviet Union. In reaction to Pakistan's nuclear capacity, the United States would pass the Pressler Amendment approving sanctions against Pakistan, but relations would de-strengthen following 9/11 with Pakistan's warm response following the tragedy. Aid was be given to Pakistan for the first time again in 2002 and 2000, saw an extension of its military friendly relationships. As the war on terror continued to linger, the United States and Pakistan would disagree on strategies while also accusing each other of various things. This dynamic would reach a head following a few incidents highlighting by the operations to kill Osama bin Laden in Abbottabad. United States also has concerns regarding Pakistan include regional and global terrorism, Afghan stability, democratizations, and human rights protections, the ongoing Kashmir problem and Pakistan-India tensions, and economic development. Recently, United States stopped military aid to Pakistan, which was about per year. However, it has been concluded. Now let's move towards relations with Russia. Um, Pakistan's relations with USSR has remained strained from the very beginning. Relations between Pakistan and USSR have undergone many ups and downs between 1947 and 1999, and from especially 1947 to 1950, Russia remained neutral in her relations with Pakistan. In 1950, USSR invited Liaquat Ali Khan to visit Moscow, but he visited Washington at first, and this clearly stemmed the Soviet Union and its relation with the two suffered from some time. However, in 1950, Soviet Union started to back over with India over the Kashmir issue when Pakistan joined SEATO and CENTO. In the mid 1950s, the Soviet Union took this as a firm declaration in the favor of United States. This greatly worsened the relations between USSR and Pakistan. In 1955, USSR especially officials backed India over the Kashmir problem and promised wholehearted support. Moreover, USSR also began to press Pakistan over Afghan claims in Pakhtunistan. However, in 1956, it offered PAK aid together with the promise to build a steel mill. If only PAK broke off its alliance with the United States, Pakistan refused to do so. The relations reached the rock bottom when in May 1960 an American spy plane U-2, as we discussed in relations with America, flew from an American base near Peshawar and was shot down while flying over Asia. Russia gave a serious warning of Pakistan and on the country. The relations after 1960, contrary, the relations after 1960 greatly elevated. In 1961, the Soviets, as a gesture of goodwill, agreed to explore oil in Pakistan, while India accepted help from USA in its war with China. The effect was to drive Pakistan and USSR closer together. When China began to give Pakistan aid in 1963, the Soviets decided to take even more decisive steps to ally with Pakistan, and in 1963 it loaned Pakistan pound 11 millions and shifted from its previous inclinations towards India over Kashmir to have a neutral stance. And the relations sky rocketed when Ayub Khan paid an official visit to Soviet Union and further agreement on trade and oil explorations was reached. After the Pakistan-India War of 1965, the Tashkent Agreement took place through the effort of Russian President. Relations, however, were at low ebb during 1969 and 71 because Pakistan's efforts to bring USA and China closer. In 1971, Russia fully supported India with military aid and Pakistan lost its East Wing. The period of 72 to 77 was a period of good relations between Bhutto and Russia. Zulfikar Ali Bhutto had low linking with USA. Russia had a background on Kashmir issue, and Russia helped Pakistan in setting up a stalemate at Karachi as being a great asset to Pakistan, thanks to good relations between the two countries, and it has been continued. However, the improved relations was short-lived. The so-option of Afghanistan in 1979 caused an open rift when Pakistan accepted MA to support Mujahideen rebels. Although Ziaullah visited Moscow in 1984 for the role of Androp, he got a cold reception. Later the year, the Soviet Union also disapproved Pakistan nuclear program, began becoming bombing air raids on Pakistan. Relations continued 1988. After 1993, Russia Deputy Foreign Minister in 1994 visited Pakistan. A broad range of bilateral issues were discussed during this visit. The Russian president extended the invitation to Pakistan prime ministers to visit Moscow. In April 1998, Pakistan Prime Minister visited Moscow. On the whole, Pakistan was unable to keep good relations with USSR, but there was always a chance to have a good relations. As we discussed in our last two slides, that there was a U2 issue in which their Pakistan base has been used against Russia, and there was a clear missile shoot over his pilots, and he captured many clubs. American didn't want to admit that had been a spying, as they would definitely have to submit meeting being cancelled and show the American to be an aggressive nation. They therefore now announced that a research plane studying weather condition had been shot down on Turkey. What they didn't know was the Soviet Union had captured Powers alive. He admitted to spying, and the Soviet forces also found a film showing that he had been taking photographs of military sites, as well as it was not a surprising. In USA usually do so, and Powers was tried to found guilty of spying. He was sentenced to 10 years imprisonment, but after 17 months he was sent back to USA in return for release of a Soviet spy serving a prison stance in the United States. These was a shorter summary of relations between USSR and USA. America and USA were as superpower. USSR remain superpower in between 1950s to 1990s, and after onwards, America is holding the position of greatest superpower, and we are trying to please him. On the other hand, America is always used Pakistan for his benefits. Let's see where we have stands in upcoming years. In our next lectures, we will discuss more relations with other countries. Thank you, students.